You know that Zac Efron movie about being turned into a teenager again? I don't think anyone actually remembers that. Is that a good reference? Anyway, wouldn't it be weird if that was an anime? Oh wait. Hello everybody and welcome to the Anime Lodge. My name is Aaron and I will be your host during your stay here. Today we're going to be covering Relife. This 2016 gem is a great anime with some strong messages. I'm going to dive into some themes as well as explore some character aspects of the show that I really enjoy. I'll be using characters, mainly the main character, to express some themes as well as throw in my own insight here and there. By the way, I did my best to avoid any spoilers outside of the first two episodes, if that really counts, so newcomers feel free to watch. Let's grab a drink and let's get started. 27-year-old Arata Kaizaki has hit rock bottom. He's unable to land a solid full-time job after quitting one several years ago. He has no friends, girlfriend, and his parents are even threatening to stop sending him money and make him come home. He ends up working part-time at a mini-mart where one day he's approached by a man named Ryo Yoake. Ryo explains he's a part of a social rehabilitation program called the Relife Project, and Kaizaki has been scouted to be the next participant. With the aid of a drug that makes the taker look 10 years younger, the Relife Project aims to let NEETs, which stands for Not in Education, Employment, or Training, experience youth again and try to fix whatever is wrong with their life. Back in high school with 1 year on the clock, Kaizaki tries to gain back a piece of himself that he lost a long time ago. So the first thing I really want to talk about is Kaizaki and his experience as a high schooler again. He gets a chance to reinvent himself as someone different or live life differently than the way he did before. Although we, the audience or viewers, can't literally go back in time and try something again, I think what this can mean to us is that it's never too late to have our own new beginnings. Kaizaki, somebody who is at the very bottom of his life, decides to restart. He understands that he's missing something, he wants to grow, and he sees restarting as the best way to do that. Of course, originally he is brought in by the promise of a potential job, but he still has to make that choice for himself. Ryo doesn't make him participate in the program. Kaizaki has to willingly want to do that. I think that means for us that we can do the same as long as we have the resolve to do it. Life is always cynically moving forward. It doesn't really matter where we are or who we are. Even if it's rock bottom, we can always change for the better. If we can identify what we want to fix in our lives, then maybe starting from a clean slate is the best way to resolve our issues. I think this is just one form of problem solving, and it's just the one that the show exemplifies. It's just kind of that form of problem solving in essence. And it's shown to be effective here because we actually get to watch someone go through that experience. Kaizaki literally goes back to being a teenager, starts on a clean slate, and finds ways to better himself. One thing though about all of this, I don't want anyone to think that starting anew means we're erasing the past, because it doesn't. Kaizaki still has to deal with everything he's experienced before. Hardships, traumas, the other downs of life, they're all still there. But by the end of the show, he gets to face them as a new, changed person. Side note here, it's interesting that in Japan, high school starts in the spring, and obviously spring is really symbolic for starting again and renewal. Just a little piece of symbolism that I honestly really love. The next point that I really want to talk about is his connections with people. The Relife Project only lasts 1 year. After that, everyone who interacted with 17-year-old Kaizaki will have their memories erased, except for, Kaizaki himself. Despite this, Kaizaki still makes the most out of that time to form meaningful connections and learn. Even if he's not there permanently, Kaizaki touches the lives of many people and they do the same for him. The effects of that are how he's able to get his life back on track. This shows us that even if connections don't last, what we learn from them can stick with us for the rest of our lives. Watching Kaizaki, I learned that the bonds we make don't even need to be particularly deep. It's the impact that they leave on us that makes them valuable. I'll give you an example. Think about someone who's heartbroken after a relationship. Maybe even a short one. Duration isn't exactly the most important part of a relationship. It's what we feel like we're gaining from it, thus what we feel like we're losing when it's over. Moving back towards the show, it doesn't start out this way for Kaizaki. He starts his program with the same bad habits that he had as a 27-year-old. He tries to blend into the background and just coast through the year without standing out. Hell, there's a part where he is even caught with cigarettes on him because he's just so used to smoking. He has all the same habits that he had before. However, as the show goes on, he gets pulled into the lives of the people around him. And I think this note is important because sometimes the most impactful connections we have and the most impact we have on people are the ones that we don't intend to make, the ones we're not even trying to impact. We don't always mean to get involved in the lives of the people around us, but life has a strange way of working out. I think the crazy thing is that we just don't realize how powerful we are as people when it comes to impacting others. We could go our entire lives without having other people tell us how much we mean to them, or how much we've changed their lives, because, I don't know, I think nowadays we just don't do that. Sometimes we just end up friends, best friend, partners. It feels like the most unlikely people. Moving back towards the show though, going on my little rant there. All of these aspects we can see in Kaizaki's relationship, and I think it helps his connections with people feel natural. It's relatable. Within the first couple episodes, he goes from being a loner to having friends. Despite his best efforts to blend in, he stands out. People eventually gravitate towards him. What's great too is that the people he becomes friends with stand out in their own ways. I think this helps justify why all these characters come together and be friends, rather than the characters just liking Kaizaki because he's the main character. They all have their own unique relationships with him, some of which don't start that positively, and it just helps the interactions feel real. Because of this, Kaizaki is able to experience connecting with different types of people in different ways. Each of these people have their own personalities and issues. Kaizaki just gets a chance to peer into their lives and help them. Relife delivers a very humanistic message here. The best way to grow is to look outwards, not inwards. We look at those around us, we see what they struggle with, and we do our best to help them. The skills we learn from helping others, we can then apply to our own lives. Now, I do not expect any of us to go around being white knights, trying to save everyone we come across, but I do agree with this show in part because I think supporting and caring for the people around us, or being vulnerable with people, can definitely create opportunities for us to grow. And if we need some examples, let's take a look at the show. One of the most important people in Kaizaki's rehabilitation is Chizuru Hishiro. She is a socially awkward loner who has trouble understanding emotional and social matters, and honestly, it has its fair share of comedical moments because of that. The two form a connection early on, and it's easy to see why. They're very similar. They both wanted to go somewhere in life and be something in society, but they weren't able to live up to the expectations of others. They both want to change for the better, but they aren't sure how to go about that. They also have very similar personalities in the sense that they're both supportive, mature, and straightforward. It's important narratively that these two share traits, so it makes sense why they're drawn together, like tracks like, as they say. But what this does for us in a thematic sense is it helps us see how Kaizaki helping Chizuru can help him. As Chizuru grows and develops, we get to see our MC learn how to deal with some of his problems. It's a concrete way to tie down his character growth. He learns from supporting the people around him. And if you think about people in real life, sometimes it's very hard for us to notice that we're growing and that we're changing because we're always, being exposed to ourselves. It's really hard to remove ourselves from our own minds sometimes. Getting back to Kaizaki and Chizuru, it becomes more and more apparent about the things that I'm talking about with them as more is revealed about their characters. But just trust me here, they have a really great dynamic. They both want to change for the better, but at the same time you see them trying to help the other person who's struggling. And I'm not even talking about their personalities, their on-screen personalities with each other, because they give us a great range of heartfelt and comedic moments. What this dynamic exemplifies is that earlier idea about helping others to help ourselves. Sometimes we're just drawn to the people who struggle in the same way we do, and I believe Real Life shows us that we do this not only because it's a good thing to do, but we experience much more when we're able to get out of our own heads and view a problem from somebody else's perspective. We can even look to Real Life to shed some light on what it thinks about struggling with problems that we've already overcome. Let's examine another relationship in the show. Kazuomi Oga and Rina Kairu are two other central characters in our story. They both have really interesting personalities, and they could be main characters in their own romantic comedy. Narratively, this helps create a dynamic cast with some strong interactions that are funny and memorable, but thematically what they're most important for is what they represent. They are the essence of youth and being young. This helps them serve as contrast characters to Kaizaki and Chizuru. If we examine Oga and Kairu's personalities, they're immature. They're not straightforward about how they feel about things. It's obvious that they both have a crush on the other person, but they don't want to say anything. It's just apparent that they have a lot of room to grow. Meanwhile, if we look at Kaizaki and Chizuru again, Kaizaki is quite literally a grown-up, and Chizuru is always shown to be mature for her age. Yet what we get to see from these two groups is that they help the other develop. What we learn from this is that we can always learn something, no matter how grown up we are. Also, it shows we should support and pass down what we know onto those who are less experienced than us. We see Kaizaki do this multiple times in the show with both Oga and Kaido. He doesn't want either of them to end up like him or other people he knows, so he gives them advice to steer them off that path. This shows us that one of the biggest advantages to growing up is that we can help the people around us not make the same mistakes we did. This show also expresses bittersweet feelings about being youthful and about growing up. Being young is not something that can last forever, just like how Kaizaki can't be a 17-year-old forever. Eventually, everyone has to grow up. That feeling of someday leaving that time, or thinking back on it even, can create a lot of mixed feelings for many people. However, just because we can't be young forever doesn't mean we have to lose what's valuable about being young. Youth is a time for exploration, discovery, and growth. And we see this all throughout anime as a whole. If we think about anime, a lot of them tend to take place in high school settings, and I don't think that's by coincidence. Of course, some anime are aimed at a younger demographic, so it can create some relatability in an audience, but it's because a lot of times in Japanese society, people tend to think about high school as this time, this explosive time of growth and discovery of oneself. It's very akin to what we here in the West think about college. People tend to say that college is like the best time of your life and that you're going to learn so much and experience so much, and it tends to be high school for people in Japan. So I think that's why we see that a lot there. But what I think I love about the messaging here in Real Life and in some other Japanese media is that we never have to stop exploring, discovering, and growing just because we've left those times of our life. We can always have our own real life, learn something new, and make connections with people. We can find something that we love that we never knew we did. We don't have to stop wanting to grow just because we're no longer in the prime, in quotation marks there, of our life. I think the prime is the present. And what we want to do right now is more important than I think things that we didn't do before. You know, when I think about things like that, I don't think growing up sounds that bad. Anyway, that is all I have to say about Real Life, its themes, and its characters. I won't lie, the ending is a bit rushed to the show. They close it out with 4 OVAs. But it's still a lot of fun to watch. You can check it out on Crunchyroll, and if anyone hasn't seen it, I really recommend it, because it's a really solid romantic comedy with some heartfelt moments. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I will be seeing you next time you check in at the lodge.